Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Folks, you won't believe it. Despite modern mobility's 3+ years lobbying down at the State House to create this vehicle code to allow e-scooters into the Illinois Vehicle Code, and they created a framework that would allow e-scooters to be legal in the state of Illinois, and there'd be rules surrounding e-scooters. They did this for like 3+ years down at the State House in Springfield. Despite doing all of that, Normal still is banning e-scooters after all. This is insane. So yesterday we made a Facebook post. If you're not following me on Facebook, find me, Conservative Cat, Cities 92.9. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel Rumble. We're doing a special edition today. So today's show is going to be completely about modern mobility's fight with the town of Normal to try to get e-scooters around, okay? And yesterday we made a Facebook post and I shared with you, and a lot of you were like shocked, and you shouldn't be, okay, because this is just classic town of Normal behavior. But even this kind of shocked me, so I don't blame you. I saw this email via FOIA. They obtained it, Modern Mobility, and Brian Day, who's the current assistant town manager, making $230,000 of taxpayer monies about a year. He sent an email to these local entrepreneurs, and we're going to get to modern mobility and what they do. But he sent an email and he referred to these local entrepreneurs as these blanking people. I can't say it on the radio. Brian Day has rated our language, so I can't really say that on the radio. You don't want to miss this explosive episode, so I'm going to jump right in. We're going to bring on Kristen and Crystal. So Kristen Ray, she is the Modern Mobility Managing Partner. Along with Crystal, she is also the Modern Mobility Managing Partner. Welcome to the show, ladies. How you doing this morning?
Doing good. Thanks so much for, bringing us on and letting us explain kind of what's been going on for the last couple of years. I know that some people are learning about this for the first time, which is unfortunate, but just glad to be here to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, Kat. Great to be here.
Good morning. Okay, well, let's jump right in. I think that in order to do this justice, we have to start from the beginning. And that kind of starts with Senate Bill 1960 and your work at the State House. So what were you told by Normal, in the very beginning prior to the birth of the Senate Bill 1960? And why go and get this bill drafted by Dave Kaler, who is the sponsor?
Yeah, and actually, it began a little bit before SB 1960. We worked with retired Senator Jason Barrickman on a version called SB 2930. So, our journey, and just for informational purposes, we're Modern Mobility LLC. We have been looking to bring a public fleet of micromobility to Normal for, now it's 3+ years. And so, we met with them first. Officials met with them in November of 2021. And we were given some original baselines. This is what, we want to see. In the beginning, originally, it was, we see this gray area in the vehicle code that, wouldn't allow them. And so that's when we started working with Senator Barrickman and that first version of the bill. But like you said in your opening, despite the 3 years of efforts, the town of Normal has banned them. They are banned. E-scooters have been banned since August of 2024. Mm-hmm. The ban happened upon signature of the governor when town council here did not pass any ordinance to opt in. So for the last 6 months or so, e-scooters have been illegal to ride anywhere in Normal. And the law does not see the difference between private units and fleets like our business. And so people might be wondering, if they're banned in Normal, why do I see them around? Why are they still being allowed? Essentially, the town has created a preferred class, allowing, without obstruction for private units, that you could go buy from Target or Sam's to operate, but made it really clear that our business was not welcome. So why haven't you heard about this ban? That would be an excellent question for Mayor Chris Koos to answer. Why is all this happening in private without even so much as a public discussion or an official statement? And I know we're on the radio and I'm trying to put in as much sarcasm as possible here.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's important for our listeners to understand that you guys aren't alone. Modern mobility isn't the first. So explain modern mobility. A lot of people know of the big names, Bird or Lime Scooter.
Mhm.
Maybe you guys have never been on any scooter. I like them. I would have loved having these around when I was at Illinois State University. I'm just going to be honest with you. I had to walk like probably a total of like
Same.
10 miles.
Right.
Right.
Because I lived in town. I couldn't get a commuter pass. It was actually unaffordable for me at the time. I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together when I was in college, so
Sure.
I couldn't afford the parking passes. So I was like, I'll just walk. And I had my backpack on, and it's sweating, and it's pretty hot, especially in the beginning
Sure.
of the semester there. And you got the
Or freezing, whichever.
Yeah.
the snow. Oh, that was awful. So, the scooters would have been awesome. So explain modern mobility, and you're not like public. It's not like you were
Nope.
expecting a
Yeah.
government contract. You just wanted to
Yep, we're a
operate your
private business, not affiliated with anyone. When we first started, we were affiliated with Bird, and since have moved towards our own model. I have a lot of history and knowledge of consumer product industry, and we're kind of sourcing direct from manufacturer. We're looking to build our own app, that people access the technology through. So yeah, we're a completely, woman founded local business. And that's kind of the shame, is that unfortunately Mayor Koos, town manager Pam Reese, specifically has decided to use her position to protect her interests, which include protecting the mayor and making sure he makes it through an election, coming up here. And yeah, and this is why, we appreciate the time. Other news agencies here in town are not going to ask any of these hard hitting questions. You know, Unbeknownst to us, those news organizations have a pretty cozy relationship to keep up, and are unwilling to, kind of allow for some of these questions to be asked. If a news organization is unwilling to ask hard questions of an elected official or a candidate, what other parts of their journalistic integrity are also up for sale? And conspiracies don't have to be written in stone. When interests align and people use their power to secure things for themselves and their friends at the expense of others, you've got a big problem. And this is wrong. How are you supposed to trust in your government when they act like this? Even the appearance of a conflict of interest should have been enough for the mayor to respectfully recuse himself, but not Mayor Chris Koos. When we questioned him on why we were hearing that Pam Reese was having 2-on-1s off the books with council members, pushing them to not pass an ordinance, he canceled a scheduled meeting with us and wouldn't reschedule. So, pretty cowardly. He didn't have the decency to even cancel the meeting with us, or give us an explanation. He did it through an assistant. But yeah, the mayor, could have put this on the agenda at any time. There could have been public discussions, a vote. Why didn't that happen?
Mm.
And for
Is it
us, it's
yeah.
optics. We believe that he didn't want this as an issue during his election, and people should take issue with someone like the mayor in a position of power who also owns a competitive business using official channels to not just ban a competitor, but completely silence a debate around it.
Is it as simple as, Mayor Chris Koos, we know he has a bike shop, and it's just, boggles my mind that it could be this simple. He owns a bike shop, and e-scooters are obviously competitors to bicycles. Is it that simple? Please don't tell me it's that simple.
I mean,
hope
in the
not.
beginning,
We didn't believe it at the
right,
beginning.
people would tell us, this is why you're running into issues. And I thought, well, right, like you're saying, it's so simple.
It can't be that.
Because you have to take like all of the scenarios that don't make sense. And, so they have banned them, but you still see them,
Mhm.
you know.
I want to get to this email really quick. It says from Pam Reese, and you obtained this via FOIA, shared it with me. It says, quote, "We have done nothing but been consistent throughout this whole process, yet you and your team continued to push a bill without tort immunity protections, which was your choice. But you believe that the town would embrace your business, but despite your
Mhm,
error, okay, you
mhm.
believe that the town would embrace your business enterprise without tort immunity, a critical requirement for municipalities and for the protection of our residents. Okay. So let's get to that. On the other side, we got to take a quick break, folks, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. We're going to talk about tort immunity. What the heck is even that, Cat? Senate Bill 1960. Apparently, it didn't have it in there. And Pam Race is using this as an excuse as to why they're not allowing e-scooters, because this bill didn't include tort immunity. I've got tons of questions about that. But you guys just hang out, and then we
Okay.
are be back. On the other side, you're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel. Really quick, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background before we bring Kristen and Crystal back on. Our guests for this special edition of Conservative Cat. I want to give you background on this legislation, and I'm just going to share with you the Center Square article that was written during legislative session last year. This was in May of 2024, and I'll share with you the article, and you guys can check this out. The legislation loosens restrictions on electric scooters, and it's headed to the governor for a signature, so he signed it. Okay. Now, this is very, very crucial. Low speed electric scooters would no longer be defined as a motor vehicle. Okay. So, this is what the bill does. It loosens these restrictions, and here's what John Witkowski said from Modern Mobility. He said scooters are not in the vehicle code currently. So because they are not in the vehicle code, they're treated as motor vehicles. Okay, so we've got to add them into the vehicle code. Otherwise, or in other words, they expect you to have headlights, tail lights, turn signals, proof of insurance, all that fun stuff. Okay, because they aren't defined in this vehicle code, we've got to treat them like motor vehicles, and that's just kind of ridiculous, right? They're freaking scooters, okay, for Pete's sake, okay, and low speed ones at that less than 10 miles per hour. They should not have the same classification as a motor vehicle. I think we can all agree with that, right? They're scooters. Senate Bill 1960 states that low-speed electric scooters can only be used in municipality or parks if authorized. Okay, so this is really interesting. And when we come back with Kristen and Crystal, I want to talk about what Dave Kaler says here. He goes, it's an opt-in. You don't have to do this. But if you want to regulate electric scooters in your community or your park district, then this is a way to do it. So that's really interesting. E-scooters, e-bikes have gained popularity in the past few years, but with little regulation. A spokesman from University of Illinois said it's difficult for police to document and penalize e-bike misconduct, which is just kind of ridiculous. A lot of these private companies, and we'll bring Modern Mobility in on this, they can actually, through their app now, I remember using a bird, right? Scooter in Chicago, right? If you use one of these things, you can be banned from the app. You can be banned from using the technology or from the e-scooters. It's all kind of done through your phone. The technology is really cool, and private companies a lot of times take it upon themselves to deal with e-bike misconduct. And they ban people from using their bikes. They can do that. We'll ask Modern Mobility here in just a couple of minutes how their technology works and how they can remedy some of these concerns maybe community members have. In 2022, the U.S. Department of Energy, Aragon National Laboratory joined the Civic Infrastructure Collaborative, and Millennium Parking Garage is in Chicago to test the results of combining off-street parking and e-scooter rentals. The hope is to reduce traffic congestion downtown. Okay, so there's ways to go about this. Like, it's scooters, people. You know, we're human beings. I think we can figure out a way to have scooters on the roads, okay? And we can use them as a form of transportation. We're human beings, they're scooters. This is not rocket scientists we're dealing with here, okay? I think that they would be an asset to the Illinois State University students. I really do. But we're going to be back for our radio friends. Smash that like button, share this out. I'm glad that I shared a little bit of background with you on 1960, but we're going to bring Kristen and Crystal back. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Before we took the break, and you guys can always find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble for extra content. You guys get extra content through the breaks. And subscribe to the channel. Before we took the break, we were talking a little bit about Senate Bill 1960 in this tort immunity provision. What is that? We're bringing on Kristen and Crystal from Modern Mobility. They're managing partners. Modern Mobility. Kristen, I got to ask you. So this tort immunity provision, what is that? Can you explain that for our listeners?
Yeah, you know, and so, you know, it sounds so serious, right? You know, tort immunity, and you know, the issue essentially, you know, how it's being flagged by Town of Normal staff. This is a red herring, plain and simple. Tort immunity essentially breaks down into the town wanting the state to prohibit them from being sued if someone wrecks on a scooter on their deficient infrastructure. Something the state of Illinois is never going to enshrine in state law. If municipalities are not keeping up their infrastructure, that's on them. It's their most basic responsibility. And so I guess they're sort of admitting, you know, that the infrastructure that they have here is failing in some way. I come from Tisquewa, Illinois, really small town, not even a stoplight. the state is not going to absolve municipalities from their responsibility, even in places like Tuscaloosa. Tort immunity was considered in early versions of the bill, and it's not something that we were told in those early discussions in 2021 we had to have. This came about later when the town moved the goalposts on us. And if they wanted and needed tort immunity so bad, why let scooters ride around pre-1960, right? SB 1960, exposing them to this huge legal risk. How many times has the town been brought, as a party to a lawsuit, or any other municipality in Illinois for that matter? So this is just something that they have said, that's kind of mysterious to people as the reason why. But the town of Normal and staff have been very dishonest about this. Given that there was not even a public discussion around this, for them to cite tort immunity and quietly ban scooters is pretty diabolical.
Well, and this is really interesting, and I don't know, maybe I'm tinfoil hatting here, but Dave Kaler, he was quoted back in 2024. He says, quote, "It's an opt-in. You don't have to do this, but if you want to regulate electric scooters in your community or your park district, then this is a way to do it." And Dave Kaler is the sponsor of this bill, and I just know how cozy their relationship is. 100% Chris Koos, Dave Kaler, Pam Reese, just from being around this community for so long, right? I just know that they've got a cozy relationship. And, I'm curious, what was Dave Kaler's response to you when, talking about tort immunity, when the discussion came up about putting it in there? Did he just say, "I can't do that"?
Well, and I do have to acknowledge, the sincere dedication of both Senator Kaler and Representative Chung and their staffs. Seeing how legislation text becomes law is really an eye-opening experience. There's so much that goes into it, so much research and coordination between staff, offices, committees, members. It's all quite amazing. In the earlier versions of the bill, tort immunity was one of those things that was discussed, but it was not like this requirement that we had to have. So some versions of the bill and the back and forth that we had over 3 years at times included this, but we weren't the only stakeholder, who had an interest. Once you start getting down, to the State House and having these discussions, there's, for us, it was Active Transportation Alliance and Illinois State Police Legislative Liaison, representatives from the Park District, representatives from IML. There was a lot of input into this, and I don't believe there was any, nefarious actions of Senator Kaler. I think what the town was looking to do is put another roadblock. So the opt-in for them is now what they're using to keep scooters banned. That was something that the town pushed for. And so, I think that what the town did, and if you look at it this way, which is kind of insulting to everyone who lives here, is the town wasted the people's time for 3 legislative sessions for sport. And they sent us down there on a fool's errand. We had FOIA'd communications. We now know that Brian Day, who was legal counsel here in Normal at the time, worked with Senator Barrickman to kill the first legislation that they wanted us to have, And I think when you look
they
at,
told you, like, "Hey, go get some legislation passed at the State House, and then we'll hear you out." But they
were controlling the back end of it, right? So they were telling us one thing and doing another. And this comes up frequently during this, several years that we have been involved in this. And without the FOIA, we would not have this information. So I know I shared with you, and before the break, we had talked about the email, which we can circle back to the Dear John email from Pam Reese. And my reply to her had a lot of receipts. I brought the receipts. And after our first conversation with them in November of 2021, she sent out an internal mail to all council members, the mayor, and several other town of Normal officials, establishing the original baselines, to which tort immunity was not mentioned. Another company here wanted to bring in e-scooters, and they were rebuffed, like us, not citing tort immunity. You know, it was this legal gray area in the vehicle code. And so, you know, the actions of town of Normal staff have been devious. So much so that, you know, even in the fall of last year, Pam Reese announced a sustainability plan that included her wishes to increase non-car transportation, including scooters. So you have, you know, someone
make this stuff up if you wanted to, folks.
you almost couldn't, right? You know, and that's kind of the part that us as small business owners here, realizing they sent us on this fool's errand, we accomplished it. You know, they moved the goalposts, and now there's complete silence. You know, if you really
Kat, I'm sure they never thought we'd accomplish this in a million years.
Yeah, Crystal, managing partner with Modern Mobility. You're listening to Conservative Cat, folks. Yeah, so they didn't think you'd be able to accomplish it. And not to mention, I know how hard it is to lobby. I've seen it down at the State House. You have to also pay what's called lobbying fees, and you have to register.
Yep, we did. Yep, we did that.
To the tune of, what is it, $300? You know, it's expensive to be lobbying down there, and
well, yeah, and it's time consuming. It takes a lot of you know, conversations. We traversed the state, going to different fundraisers for you know, different reps, and having conversations down at the State House, and you know, being generally supportive of our, you know, project, realizing that there was other input, you know, that we were going to hear. And you know, that's kind of the disappointing part, is that 172 of 177 members between the Senate and the House voted yes on SB 1960, overwhelmingly bipartisan. There was not a single no vote in the House. And
that doesn't
you know,
happen.
yeah, and so, you know, we spent a lot of time making sure that staff and members understood, you know, the motivations. You know, we went down, I testified in front of the Senate Transportation Committee, and, you know, we talked about the fact that we were here because our community felt vulnerable. You know, we thought we were doing the right thing. You know, our town sends us down. We're, you know, getting this legislation on their behalf. You know, we'll be able to start our business. Little did we know,
thought they'd take us more seriously.
Yeah. Instead, you know, they were working behind the scenes to crush us, to drain our resources, to waste our time, to waste the people's time. You know, and that's the part that really is upsetting.
Now, can you guys tell me about this email? This is really interesting, from Brian Day. Definitely, I don't think it violates any kind of law, but it's really weird because also in this email, he instructs I believe this was to Brad Cole, to, you know, not like send a reply. Like, he reminds him, hey, these emails are subject to FOIA, you know, call me if you've got if you've got a reply. And in this email, Brian Day, he admits and pretty much brags about shutting down Jason Barrickman's Senate Bill 2930, I believe. And then he like goes on further, and he says, like, hey, this is kind of what we're wanting in this Dave Kaler bill, the Senate Bill 1960. Tell me about that exchange. And I mean, it feels nasty because of the way at the end of the email he instructs him, like, hey, this is subject to FOIA. Tell me where you see a problem here, where Brian Day is communicating with IML in his official capacity. I think at the time, maybe legal counsel. He was recently promoted to assistant city manager. But tell me about that email exchange with Brad Cole, the chief executive officer of the Illinois Municipal League.
Yeah, I mean, we discovered this email, you know, after it was sent, a couple years after it was sent. And he sent that email a week after Kaler first filed 1960. So the timing of it was, they've been on it. The town of Normal has instructed its people to work on this project. The taxpayers have completely funded this effort, unfortunately. And yeah, SB 2930 was our first attempt to pass this legislation. And the the bragging of killing it, again, goes against what they initially sent us down there to do, which was to clarify the vehicle code and, set these standards for e-scooters to operate. And infuriating to get to the bottom of the email where he just casually mentions, that responses are subject to FOIA. I mean, isn't this what we don't want people in government to do? How is this person being promoted? This should be a fireable offense, going around records acts. But if you were running an honest operation, this would be. But Pam Reese is not. They promoted him and gave him a pay raise. And this is the type of behavior that they have encouraged, unfortunately.
Yeah. So in this email, he says, quote, our city manager discussed the matter with him, Dave Kaler, and he indicated that he would want the legislation to be permissive for municipalities. To that end, I've drafted some potential legislation that we believe would accomplish this.
Mm-hmm.
We are meeting with the senator on other matters next Wednesday, and the issue may come up. I would like to get IML, the Illinois Municipal League, this is a lobbyist, they're registered lobbyists,
Mm-hmm.
eyes on this draft legislation before we give him anything. Will IML please take a look at the attached draft legislation? And then he, via PDF, attaches a full-blown law,
Mm-hmm.
which I just
Yeah.
thought was odd. I started scratching my head because I was just like, wait a second, this is Brian Day, paid $200,000 a year, whatever, or $200,000 a year. And I was like, he's acting like a legislator. And we didn't elect him to craft legislation. He's an appointed representative of the town of Normal. And I just found it very peculiar that we've got somebody that we're paying to do the job of a city assistant city manager or legal counsel, maybe even at this time. And he's out there crafting legislation and kind of working with his previous, because this is important information too, folks. He used to work at the Illinois Municipal League. Brian
Mm-hmm.
Day. So what do you guys think about that? Will, this email where he says, hey, IML, take a look at this. I've drafted legislation. I mean, he's acting like a legislator, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think the problem, is that we set out, with good intentions to build a big table, to have people put their input, honestly into this legislation. This we always, now we look back and have thought this was the poison pill, right? This was the tort immunity, which mysteriously, shows up in 2023, 2 years after we were given the original baselines. And that's our accusation, is that the goalposts were moved constantly to thwart us and to run interference. And, so, Brian working with a previous employer, this is what we want to see, knowing that once this legislation got down to the General Assembly and put into any sort of legitimate legislation text, that, other entities who we, wanted as this big table would take issue with it. And that's where I mentioned earlier, the tort immunity, being this red herring. There's no other cities in Illinois that come to the same conclusion as Normal. But not all cities have mayors that have competitive businesses. So you start to put together all of these things that don't make sense. So, they're banned, but the town won't announce it. But they're banned, but they're still allowing them, but they're banned, and yet there's no framework or mechanism for enforcement. And this is not something that's being discussed even at the council level. At any point, the mayor could have or could still put this on the agenda, but it'd get really nasty, right? Where he's not recusing himself and they're debating this whole thing. And, here he is with a competitive business. And there is support for this in the council. That's what's so crazy, is that, this entire, if we wouldn't have spoken up, this entire thing would happen so quietly. Nobody would know. And he's running for mayor again. This is not a question that got brought up at all during this election cycle for him to have to answer this. So the interference for him is coming from staff who's, how is keeping this ban secret helping them, right? I mean, what kind of tort immunity protections do they think they have by not announcing this ban to the general public? What's the point of keeping it secret? And we think it's been to help the mayor's campaign, how this is not an in-kind donation from the town of Normal. It's quite a gift to not have to take any hard questions about this. With only a few weeks left to go in the campaign, we've waited, not necessarily patiently, but we've waited for them to do the right thing, and we realize that they're not going to do it.
Yeah, well, we have to take a quick break for our radio friends. We're going to come back on the other side via the stream. You guys are welcome to join us, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. We'll be back in just a little bit, folks. If you're listening on the program via the radio on Cities 92.9, when we come back, there's so much to unpack here. I do want to get to WGLT NPR, publicly funded radio, and the kind of a tax. That's the best way I could kind of describe it, saying, hey, don't ever contact us again. Not sharing your side of the story, which is why I want to dedicate this show. It's a special edition of Conservative Cat to your voice. You're a private company, you're a small business, trying to come here to Normal, something that I think that, and people feel strongly about e-scooters. We made the post and people are like, they get thrown around everywhere, but this is a conversation to be having amongst the citizenry in a council meeting on the agenda, right? And maybe we'll bring up some of that, because I think that you guys
for sure. We'd love
technology.
Yeah, we'd love to chat about it. Definitely.
So we're going to be right back, folks. You're listening to Conservative Cat. All right, ladies. Real quick, I just wanted to, for our friends here on the stream, so we're live, and folks, you can subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, share this out with your friends. We need to get the word out there. Normal has banned e-scooters. And the question is, why does Chris Koos have such beef with e-scooters? Some of you have, been commenting and saying like, yeah, well, e-scooters, they die, like the charging, Kristen and Crystal, you guys chime in here. When they die, people leave them around. Is there like a way to combat that? And I feel like we should have this conversation, like, I don't know, in City Hall, right? And it should be on the agenda, and then citizenry can bring their concerns and bring why they want e-scooters. But can you address some of that, like technology wise? Is there a way to address that on your end?
And kind of unfortunately,
we'd love to address this.
Yeah. And sort of, what you see in other cities are other fleet managers. Those are other small businesses too, right? Who are not doing their jobs. If you see them in a pile, that means that nobody can rent them. They're dead, whatever. This is how those business owners are deciding they want to run their operations. That's not how we would run an operation here. And early mistakes in the industry, I think, have tarnished, the public asset that they could be. So yeah, I mean, there's the technology, the GPS ability to follow them anywhere, to see when batteries run low. We have the technology that we can put in our app that has a sensor that if it's fallen over, we are notified. They can be geofenced, so they can go where they are appropriate. We can throttle the speeds in areas of high pedestrian traffic. There's a lot that we can do on the operator end that other fleet managers may not be doing. And so this being a public project, and I read some of the comments on the 92.9 Cities post, and yeah, not everybody likes these, right? But they're are people who do want them. And this is something that came up in our FOIA as well, is that there was a community survey that the town of Normal did. It's been a couple years, but several people in that were asking for, public fleets of micromobility. There are students that commented on the Vedette article, or who were quoted in the Vedette article, talking about how these are an asset. Not everyone in town is going to ride them. Micromobility is kind of where, it's maybe a little far to walk, but maybe too close for a car. It fits a gap of transportation. And these are some of the conversations we had with like Connect Transit, our, transit authority here, is, how could we use this public asset that we want to bring here to benefit the public transit system and fill some of those gaps that maybe cost the public transit authority money, that they don't want or have to spend. And so, yeah, that's the disappointing part, is that there are benefits and they're being overlooked.
Yeah,
For
and that
sure.
would be nice if
Well,
we could save Connect Transit money. You're saving the taxpayer money because
for sure, for
Connect
sure.
Transit, it's a public transportation. We pay for it, and if they save money, we save money. Everybody wins.
And if it's more efficient
Kat,
and works for people.
Yeah,
oh, I'm
Crystal, go
sorry. Go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say, Kristen and I are part of this community. We live here with our families. We don't want to be a blight on the community. We just want to add to it and be an asset. Um, if our business looks like crap out there, we look like crap in the community. So we definitely don't want that. We want to add good things.
Right. Ladies, we're coming back in just about, 30 seconds for our radio friends, and I'll bring this to our radio friends as well, where, hey, you guys have the technology to keep these things, to keep the e-scooters upright. You have the technology to even ban people from using your scooters. I believe you told me that. And then even to do sobriety tests, so
Right.
Yeah.
we're going to come right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Folks, subscribe. We'll be back for our radio friends in just a couple of minutes. Woohoo! Hey, you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. I've got Kristen and Crystal here. They are working with me on this show. It's a special edition. Normal has banned e-scooters. Share this out with your friends. Tell people that there is a ban because Chris Koos should have to answer as to why Normal has banned e-scooters. And really, we should be having, public conversations in town hall, not here on this program, right? Unfortunately, but we were talking with Crystal about how e-scooters, a lot of people have concerns about them, laying around when they die, they're, going to be a problem, people bumping into each other. Your private business, you guys live here. I didn't even know that. You guys live here at Normal. You wouldn't operate it that way. And there's cool technology. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean, the technology, controls the units completely. We can geofence them so they can stay away from areas that they are not appropriate. So you're not going to see our fleet running down Veterans Parkway. We can governor the speed and throttle the speed in high pedestrian areas where, it's not appropriate for them to go. But also, too, SB 1960, we've brought this up several times. Within SB 1960 sets speed standards in the state, along with a couple other standardized notions of, where they can and can't go, age restrictions and such. And so, when you see them in other communities, maybe strewn about, that's a fleet manager there, and that's their operation that they've decided to not maximize. When you
They
see
maybe
scooters,
don't even live in that community.
yeah, fleet manager might have been brought in by a larger company. They have no connection to the community and they don't care. They're making money and don't feel like they need to have any sort of upkeep and maintenance of their fleets. We can put a sensor in to show that it's fallen over. So parking spaces of them are neat. We can have people end their rides in specific areas so that they're not thrown all over the place. And that's kind of the thing, is that, when they are down and they're, strewn about, they're not able to be used, So for us as business people, we realize that would be a loss of revenue. Not to mention, possibly dangerous, being thrown on a sidewalk or in someone's yard. We want to be a community asset. And, unfortunately, the town has never treated us like that, that we've always wanted to bring some nuisance here. And they've treated us with complete disrespect in that regard. Regardless of how we have ever explained, the operation that we want to bring here, you'd think, you'd rather have a business who's been working to craft legislation in the back end for 3 years and brought all these community partners together, at the state level as well. But yeah, we've been discarded as, someone that their business is not welcome in Normal.
Yeah.
Like we're outsiders.
Yeah, well, to the extent, Crystal, you guys were called blanking people by Brian Day, the assistant manager.
Yeah.
And I was shocked by that, to see such
How embarrassing for him.
Yep.
I was like, what? This guy is getting paid this much money, and all he has to do is be a little keyboard warrior and use profanities about local entrepreneurs. Despite what you might feel, if you feel super passionate about e-scooters, I think they're kind of cool, and I'm pro e-scooter. And I would imagine a lot of these people would be, in the sense, like you said, there was a sustainability study that said that we should shift from, non-cars. And this is electric, like these are battery operated, no carbon emissions, right? You would think that the town, especially when they're also debating, and I don't even know if they've passed an ordinance on this yet, but new buildings, new infrastructure, banning gas completely from new infrastructure that goes up in the town of Normal, which is probably going to be met with all kinds of lawsuits. You can't really do that. But the town doesn't want even gas in their new buildings, and you would imagine that this would be the sustainable choice for Normal. You guys were working with Connect Transit, could have possibly saved Connect Transit some money, therefore saving the taxpayer some money. I think it's a win-win-win-win-win. And it's unfortunate that we're having a conversation on the radio rather than the council meeting where this conversation needs to happen. But they won't announce the ban. They won't, put anything on the agenda. And that's just tragic. We have to take a quick break, ladies, but we're going to come right back. I've got to get to, Sammy, which is local. They do the college housing, a lot of student housing. Darren Rogers, there was actually emails where he explained, hey, I think that this would really be an asset. I think that this would draw students to, my operation, the student housing, if we had these here in town. And we're going to get to the town's response to Darren Rogers, because I think that was really interesting. We're going to be right back, folks. You're listening to Conservative Cat. All right, folks. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Crystal, can you tell me a little bit about this Sammy Darren Rogers email? We're going to bring it on for our radio friends, but Darren, he's another business owner who wants modern mobility, apparently.
Yeah, and this was, again,
could be a great collaboration for sure.
Absolutely. This was another communication that we discovered via FOIA, because, again, so much of this has been done behind the scenes. But he had inquired, maybe a year or so before us, or after us, to Mercy Davison from the town, and he was blown off too. Right. These can't be ridden on the streets. There's a gray area in the vehicle code. So even to him, tort immunity was not mentioned. And this is one of the receipts I sent back to Pam Reese, is mentioning that, even other inquiries, they have not been consistent. And so, yeah, the town has been resistant for quite some time, regardless of who it is. We haven't necessarily just us been singled out, but they have decided that they will run interference to whomever, and for how long. So 3 years of time that we've been dealing with it, Pam Reese, Brian Day, and Mercy Davidson, over that 3 years period have grossed over $1 million in compensation, and not one of them can figure out a simple e-scooter program. I think as we dig into this, you can see the motivations of people, and why it's so insidious that they're banned, but they're not announcing it, but they're banned, but you still see them, but
Right.
they're it's
Mhm.
it's yeah,
We're
pretty
coming back
revealing.
real quick, ladies, and we'll be right back. I'm popping back on from the radio, but we'll be
Okay.
right back. Woohoo! Hey, good morning, folks. So do appreciate it. At the top of the hour, we're coming up against a hard break here, folks, but we have so many questions we need to get answered. Like I said, Darren Rogers talking to the town about e-scooters being an asset. The town's response, what was it? How they are depriving normalites of e-scooters and how that hurts the community, how modern mobility is seeking, they're not seeking government subsidies here, folks. They just want to be a private business, and they went on this wild goose chase for 3+ years that Normal sent them on. And then in the background, you've got them, almost like lobbying against them when they told them to go try to change the vehicle code to allow e-scooters, or to make it easier for e-scooters to operate on municipal streets. And there's so much to get to, because there's also WGLT, where they said, hey, don't ever contact us again, to Modern Mobility, and refused to share their side of the story. So we won't do that. We're going to be on your side, okay? And we are going to allow private business owners to speak about how they were disrespected, to the point where Brian Day even refers to these local entrepreneurs as, quote, blanking people. I can't say it on the air. Brian Day, you got kind of the potty mouth on you, according to some of these void emails. And then I want to get to SIU Carbondale, Rockford, e-scooters companies. A lot of these companies told the town of Normal, hey, we have electric scooters, and they're working out. They're actually, quote, a tremendous success, is what SIU Carbondale had said. But despite all of this, despite the sustainability plan where the town of Normal was looking to enhance non-car transportation, despite all of this, they're still banning scooters. Like, there is a ban in the town of Normal. I also want to talk about Brad Park, and how Brad Park told Modern Mobility that, hey, yeah, we haven't received anything from the town saying that we should be policing these e-scooters. This is like a quiet ban, which is really weird, and it's probably because Chris Koos is running for mayor, and he doesn't want to answer questions about why there's a ban on e-scooters. You're listening to Conservative Cat. We're going to be right back at the top of the hour. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. All right, folks, go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We're back talking with Crystal and Kristen. Crystal, thanks so much for being with the program. We got about 5 or so minutes to chat a little bit for our streaming friends. So tell me a little bit about WGLT's coverage. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit about Darren Rogers and Sammy for radio friends, but I do want to get to WGLT's coverage too. Mr. Denham told you not to contact him anymore. Why did he do that?
Yeah, we had been interviewed in a 2023 article that, mentioned our intentions of wanting to bring a fleet of micromobility to town. We went back down at the statehouse, worked some things out, and, ended up getting this law passed. And so, assuming that, the town of Normal was being honest. We sort of expected, the business to kind of get up and running, and ordinance would be passed, and we'd be on our way. And so just wasn't happening. We were hearing that the town of Normal city manager was having 2-on-1s with council members, and so we reached out to GLT for kind of a follow up. Hey, after all this time, we aren't. It sounds like the town is not going to allow these, and they had an upcoming interview with the town coming up, and so they agreed to bring it up. That resulted in an article sometime in early December, and the article was wildly inaccurate. They let Pam Reese just kind of say whatever she felt, completely unchallenged. There was so many questions that they could have asked, and on a subsequent Facebook post, I shared a screenshot of the initial conversation of how this came about, because GLT did not decide to show the reasoning. It was the town isn't making any sort of attempts to clarify this. It was us. And so from the screenshot that I posted, Ryan Denham told me to never contact him again. Disconnected with me on LinkedIn. Apparently was so insulted that we lost any chance to be able to share this story. There was a lot of questions that they could have asked. Why is Normal the only city to come to this conclusion on tort immunity? Should the mayor recuse himself because he owns a competitive business? How many e-scooter lawsuits have the town been party to? Why didn't the town pursue this legislation years ago? Those were questions that GLT didn't ask, and it's pretty disappointing that a news organization here would try to preserve their friendly relationship over actually telling the real story.
Yeah, and I'd be curious. They wrote this article. I didn't read it in December. I guess they made it seem like the town of Normal was pursuing some sort of clarification with the vehicle code, but that's you guys, right?
Yeah, that was what we were forced to do.
Okay, so that's where the article came from, where they tried to make Normal look like the good guys and that they were trying to clarify this gray issue, but really it was you guys doing that. And really they were operating, this back end, like squashing, trying to squash this or trying to add things to this legislation that would give them kind of a back out. I think. I mean, I don't know, Dave Kaler. This tort immunity, I've seen so much passed in Springfield. Tort immunity would be hard, I'd imagine, but I mean, with the super majority that his party has, I would imagine it'd be pretty simple to add, something in there, even if they carved it out for, Normal specifically, because I've seen that where they carve out specific tort immunity for just the town of Normal. That could have been something that they did.
But the tort immunity it's a red herring. Again, like I said, there's no other community in Illinois is coming to the same conclusion. What's different about Normal than other cities? And I think you go back to the same insidious, right?
What is that, Crystal? I think we all know the answer. But
the mayor owns a bike shop.
Yeah. And whether or not
I should have put it in Jeopardy form. What is the mayor owns a bike shop? Sorry. Right. Yeah, go ahead.
And is the mayor owns the bike shop.
Whatever their full motivations, maybe they didn't want these because they thought they'd be a visual blight, or they didn't want these because they didn't want to support a small business. They've never been honest about why e-scooters as a public fleet could not come here. And again, really important for listeners, they are allowing them. Go down to campus any day of the week and you'll see an e-scooter. They have not banned them. Right. They've banned us, a private business, from operating, but you could go to Sam's or Target and buy one and ride it on the street. The law does not see private units and public fleets any different. They are the same.
And those manufacturers have different standards than the Illinois law. So they're going to be able to go faster and go anywhere. You might see them on Veterans Parkway, whereas you won't see our fleet on Veterans Parkway.
Nope.
We're going to be right back, ladies. Hang on just a second for our radio friends. Woo! Welcome to the show. I so do appreciate you tuning in. Yes, folks, we are joining, or you're listening to Conservative Cat and joining us this morning. It's a special edition. The title of today's show, Normal Bans E-Scooters. But this is a quiet ban, quiet now, because Chris Koos is running for normal and he doesn't want to answer as to why he's got so much beef with e-scooters. And this isn't just modern mobility, folks. Managing partners Kristen and Crystal are here with me. They've done this in years past with other private fleets, private companies wanting to operate e-scooters. Crystal, you brought up a great point. If you go down to ISU's campus any day of the week, you see e-scooters. Explain, although they're banned, I mean, you can pick one up at Target, Amazon, whatever, and you can ride that one around, and it has, it doesn't fit within the vehicle code or nothing. Explain to me why we'll see that, and is it a concern that normal PD isn't policing this, although they're banned?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the unfortunate part is, here's this ban that has been enacted. It's been 6+ months. There's been no community conversation. There's been no communication or coordination between departments at the town of Normal. So the Dear John email I received from Pam Reese was in response to my inquiry to Brad Park, Public Information Officer at Normal PD. My inquiry surrounded, what is Normal going to do post SB 1960? Essentially, when the town doesn't opt in, these are illegal. Is there a framework? Is there a mechanism here for enforcement? Will there be fines? Will people be arrested if they're on e-scooters? This is not something that the town has even communicated to its own departments, which will go to show you, how paper thin this ban is, and so, the quiet ban has been what Normal's style has seemingly come to. The performative aspect of, hey, we have the sustainability plan and we want to be, bike friendly. That's all for show. These are not actual things that the town of Normal has, seriously tried to implement. If so, they wouldn't have fought us for 3 years behind the scenes to ban e-scooters, while also saying publicly they want them, while also banning them but not telling anybody. We're and somewhat, if we sound bitter, it's because we are.
Right.
I don't think that there is any other business in this town that would be required to go get legislation on behalf of the town, because we didn't need that.
On their own dime.
Yeah, for us to finance it completely. We hired a lobbyist for governmental relations because we were confused. Like, why is this so hard? We're building this big table. This is what everybody wants, apparently. And we didn't realize until we FOIA'd communications how much the town behind the scenes was pulling the strings.
Well, and Kat, let me tell you, they told us, the town of Normal told us no. They expected us to walk away.
Mm-hmm.
We persisted, and they can't figure out why we won't go away.
Yeah.
Well, and it's
like we're petulant children or something. It's so annoying.
And it's not just you. Prior to Modern Mobility, there were other e-scooter companies that wanted to operate in Normal, correct?
Yep.
So, and another thing that I want to get to is Darren Rogers, and you guys aren't alone. You're not the only proponents of e-scooters. I guarantee if you were to poll ISU students, 9 out of 10 of them would probably say yes. Now you might get a few people who are like, they're an eyesore. I hate that they're laying around. We already addressed that. You have the technology. Hell, you even have the technology to ensure that nobody drunk is getting on them. Have I ridden an e-scooter drunk? Yes, I have. It was so much fun. I love e-scooters. I was safe. It wasn't like I was
Well,
a
and
little safe.
that's the amazing part of the technology is that, we can institute a sobriety test, to ensure safe ridership. You had mentioned earlier, and this was a conversation we had, is that if someone's being a jerk on one, there's a community reporting aspect that someone could take a picture of them. It will geolocate them, and we can ban bad actors, from the platform. And so, there's a lot of controls that have come out of pain points, and people riding intoxicated on scooters, obviously a pain point. So
Yeah, and
here's some technology that can help with that.
yeah, and you guys would actually have like the regulation right now. You can do private scooters, and it seems like the town of Normal won't enforce it, the ban. And you can get these private scooters that go way over 10 miles per hour.
Hmm.
Maybe they're way faster than that. You can get
Mm.
on them drunk, and you can leave them around. Modern mobility actually brings, more regulation to the
Yep.
the space there. Um, so I find it interesting, Darren Rogers, what did the town say to Darren Rogers? They didn't mention toward immunity that, hey, we're working with modern mobility on passing legislation,
Hmm.
but we have to work on toward immunity being in there. And they didn't say any of that. What was their
Yeah,
response
no,
to you?
they blew him off too. They cited the gray area in the vehicle code, and it was a couple
Hadn't even thought of
conversations.
toward immunity at that point,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, they hadn't come up with this other ring of interference,
Goalpost.
and so they you know blew off another community member, who has a vested interest in bringing benefits to the residents that they provide housing for. Like you mentioned earlier, the cost of vehicles, the cost of insurance, especially for college students, pretty unattainable. I was an ISU student. I grew up on a farm. I didn't walk anywhere. I didn't even there is no public transportation in Tisquoia, Illinois. So, there's a lot of students that come from areas that could use something like this. I have even a story of trying to walk home late at night, and being accosted by some men in a vehicle who were like, "You shouldn't be walking alone late at night."
Hmm.
As a lot of women know, right? Uh, Sometimes you're unsafe at those hours, and so we could see a lot of different applications for people who are trying to traverse campus safely. Get home without incident, and all these reasons are being overlooked, for very nefarious reasons. The town has been very devious and diabolical in the way that they have instituted this ban, and unfortunately, without people like you who are sharing the story, I don't know how this gets out. I don't know how students find this out. Having a couple comments in a GLT article over Christmas break, not really announcing it publicly, not really taking accountability for what they've done.
Mm. No, let's hit on that really quickly. WGLT, I just want to inform our radio listeners that they told you, hey, don't contact us ever again.
Hmm.
Despite you, trying. So how'd they spin the story for Normal? What was their spin or their take on the story, and how did they report on, the lobbying efforts of you and, the town and their request that you go do this in Springfield for 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, they just printed the red herring, the tort immunity, right, without asking any, deep questions about why. I think I brought this up before the break is, why didn't GLT ask, why is Normal the only city to come to this conclusion on tort immunity? Should the mayor recuse himself, given that he owns a competitive business? How many e-scooter lawsuits has the town been party to? And why are they sticking to this tort immunity defense? Why didn't the town pursue this legislation years ago? Um, you know, when they were still at the same risk for tort immunity. So pre SB 1960, pre August of 2024, the town of Normal was still open to the risk of tort immunity and did nothing. So that this is coming up now as a reason to completely ban them, in our mind is just it's fake. It's the distraction,
Yeah.
to use. And GLT fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, and didn't ask a single question that was probing, to hey, well, they're banned, but what's the mechanism for banning? What are you going to do when you see a student riding an e-scooter? Are you going to take the very precious resources of normal PD to now pull people over on e-scooters and fine them? Where do those fines go? How does that benefit the town? Because on the inverse, for us to operate, and this is the kind of the saddest part, especially where we are budget wise with the city, each ride from Modern Mobility is taxable at sales tax percentage 875, and so this operation and what it would bring in revenue, the town has lost $200,000 to $300,000 in tax revenue over the last 3 years. So that's when you really start to realize like there's something else here. This isn't explainable, because when you're, like I've said several times during this broadcast, they're banned, but they're not going to tell anybody. But they're banned and you still allow them. But they're banned and we can't operate, but Target and Sam's can sell them and they can ride around anywhere completely unrestricted. And so when you start kind of putting these things together, you realize like there's a there. And unfortunately, the conclusion is that you have somebody who has an incredibly huge conflict of interest, controlling the levers of power, not putting this on an agenda, not allowing for any public debate. And again, our FOIA requests didn't just stop at communications. We looked at police incident reports over a 2.5-year period. There were 0. We looked at community complaints. There was 2 by the same person. We provided the Chicago e-scooter pilot study, which examined over 1 million rides with 0 serious accidents and 0 deaths over a 2-year period. There is data there to support and show, and even like you mentioned earlier in the broadcast, Pam Reese reached out to counterparts in Carbondale, Champaign. Brian Day reached out to a counterpart in Rockford. They were told that these operations are successful. So what are they hung up on? And again, I think it goes back to the levers of power being controlled by somebody who has a huge conflict of interest, who should have recused themselves from any sort of consideration here, and didn't. And that's what I think people should realize is that, when you don't really have a representative democracy of even your local council, you've completely lost, your ability to challenge, bad ideas. And this is bad for normal.
Yeah, well, and the SAU Carbondale, I mean, I think the quote was they were a tremendous success. They had an agreement, I think it was CEO or something like that,
Yep.
a private fleet. And they said it was a tremendous success. So there really is no reason. Now, I wanted to ask a little bit about the profanities that Brian Day used when referring to you and your local entrepreneurs here in Normal. He called you blanking people.
Yeah.
And I thought I said blank or saw something like all cap blank no.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So explain to me the profanity-ridden email exchange and what inspired Brian Day to call you blanking people.
Well, this is the disdain that they've had for us, to him, we are these effing people, and
how embarrassing for him.
Yeah. And, we asked around about all of the people involved, and nobody had a real high opinion of Brian Day. Actually, one person that we talked to described him as a goof, which not great, right? But this is where those profanity-laced emails will make sense with the goof reference. In the exchange that he called us these blanking people, it was actually them that got wrong, what they were talking about. They had accused us of saying something we didn't say, And that maybe shows a little bit of why someone would refer to him that way. In another email exchange with his counterpart in Rockford, he accused us of sharing a fake agreement with him, a micromobility agreement from Bird. It was not a fake agreement, something that the counterpart acknowledged in that email exchange. So like I said, this is the level of disdain and contempt they've had for us from the beginning. Who requires legislation and then works to kill it and brags about it? And how is this a
Yeah.
good use of taxpayer time? I think of the time we've put in, unpaid, by the way, because when you're an entrepreneur and you're a startup, we've been pre-revenue for all these years. It's hard, right? You realize the time you put in, the time you spend away from your family, the loss of other opportunities. But people like Brian Day and Pam Reese and Mercy Davison, they get paid every day. They're clock punchers. They go in,
Very well.
they're very well compensated, and this is how they're spending their time. I think that should kind of upset people to know that, here's this very diabolical plan that from the beginning we imagine them, because we're better, right? We imagine them laughing at us, and that's so hurtful, right? Here's this small business who, on their own dime took upon themselves to bring something to the community that, we were given baselines. This is what we needed to do. And, to have them treat us in this way is incredibly disrespectful. And we're not the only ones, as we've asked around, there's people in housing and development who've been treated this way. People in economic development here, different business owners who've been treated this way. The arrogance level of people at City Hall is just beyond what I think anyone could comprehend. And fish rot from the head. So, we sort of feel like, here is this man who has been in elected office here in Normal for 20 years. He's Illinois' longest serving mayor, I believe, who have crafted and instituted this way of interacting with the public. And, maybe you've had good experience working with the town on some project, but you work on something with them that they don't want, and it's this joke to them. This is how you're treated, and this is how they talk about you in private. I think that we again try to be good people, try to be good business people, and be a part of this community. And it's pretty disheartening to see how someone will talk about you behind your back.
Right. I do want to get to a little bit of this tort immunity, and this is their whole reason. They're saying that Senate Bill 1960. I think this is interesting because even without Senate Bill 1960, I'm sure a town like I live in the town over, right? I guarantee my town they'd be like, oh, modern mobility wants to come here. Okay, sure, that's tax revenue for us, and like they didn't even need Senate Bill 1960. Like some towns will just be like, oh yeah, sure, we'll do whatever you want. And
I mean, all the towns we mentioned, Rockford, Carbondale, Champaign, Chicago, Lincoln has some. There's plenty of communities that don't come to the same conclusion. And that's why we were so disappointed in GLT. Why not ask why? Why keep this at such surface level? And I think that's a huge favor that they gave to the town of Normal.
Well, and I think it's a huge ask to want tort immunity in the first place. So tort immunity for our listeners, they want to be exempt from any kind of lawsuit. So say you're riding around on an e-scooter and you fall down and you scrape
on
up your
their
knee.
Deficient infrastructure, by the way. That's how,
Yeah, and we have a system for that, right, Kristen? It's called the courts. It's called bringing a lawsuit, whether that be civil Well, it'd be a civil lawsuit. You bring a civil lawsuit against the town. You say, hey, I was riding my e-scooter. You guys had a deficient infrastructure, and I'm saying that this is your fault. There's going to be a judge presiding over that case. There's going to be a prosecutor, right? The town is going to be able to defend themselves, in court. And, if they actually are found guilty, then work that in the court system. So to even ask for the tort immunity provision is kind of, what's the word? It's just a big ask, and it's kind of stupid.
It's
overreach.
Yeah, and it's something too, the overkill of it is where it's unnecessary, because the town has never been brought as a party to a lawsuit. For all the years that e-scooters have been present in this community pre SB 1960, never has this happened. So this is this wild hypothetical that they have decided, after all this time, is so important, yet it's never played out. This is a fantasy of the town of Normal Council, who apparently is skilled enough to draft legislation but not interpret it. There was a Illinois Supreme Court case at the same time this was going on, called Olave v. Chicago. It was a gentleman who wrecked on a pedal bike in the city of Chicago on some deficient infrastructure. As that case wound through the courts, Illinois Supreme Court case decided in favor of municipalities on permitted use versus non-permitted use. And so towns are protected. This extra, we don't have tort immunity enshrined in state law, is the red herring. It's this fake proposal.
And not
Well,
to mention,
oh, I'm sorry, Kat.
No, go ahead, Crystal.
I was going to say, the thing about it is, too, with our business, if there is deficient infrastructure, which we know there is, we can route them around them and not put them down that thoroughfare where it's dangerous. However, private units, which they're currently allowing, we don't have that ability. So they're a lot less likely to be sued by one of our riders, even though we don't currently have any yet, than by the free rangers that are currently out there.
And also, too, and Crystal makes an excellent point here. And also along the same vein, if you don't announce a ban and no one knows about a ban and they're still riding them, we believe the town is still subject to the tort immunity, right? So if you're not telling someone they're banned,
be more responsible.
And then, this person wrecks and they're like, well, I have hurt myself and I have been, brought up here. The town is not protected, if they're not telling anybody that these certain laws and regulations exist. Again, such a farce. But again, the reasoning that they have brought is they don't want to be sued, which they haven't. And they get sued, I'm sure, all the time. The town of Normal is party to lawsuits. I mean, I think people can remember back when they were party of a lawsuit for that art wall that's just off of the circle. How much in legal fees did they spend there? And if we want to even go at a higher level, how many calls does the town of Normal take each year for domestic violence? And how much of those are because of alcohol use? Normal used to be a dry town, right? You want to collect revenue off of alcohol, and then you want the town to pay for officers to go out to domestic violence calls. I mean, it's what priorities are, right? Like what costs the town? The town incurs costs all over the place. It's what their priorities are.
I think there was a lawsuit. I forget exactly what it was, but they pay out lawsuits all the time. And they work that into, their budget. They have to work that in, like, hey, we have to pay out this lawsuit. I forget what it was.
Millions of dollars.
To do with the art in Uptown. I'll have to look that up. But we've got to take a quick break, ladies. We're going to be right
Okay.
back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Kristen, Crystal, I'm bringing you back on. We're going to talk a little bit. I actually looked this up and I couldn't quite remember. It was the Uptown mural there. They filed a lawsuit, some artists, against the town of Normal and against the developer, Bush Construction, in hopes of saving this artwork. It was a lawsuit that was filed. And the town showed interest in redeveloping Uptown, and part of that redevelopment, they would have had to destroy this mural. And the lawsuit, I think it was ultimately dismissed. But like, this is just another one of those things where it's like,
They still had to pay a lawyer to defend them. That's where we're trying to make the distinction, is that the town is party to lawsuits all the time for all kinds of things. To force us to have some, enshrined state law protecting them is overkill. But it's the reason, right? It's the red herring, it's the whole thing. But yeah, they, and I believe just recently paid out several $1 million to a man for wrongful conviction. So the town incurs costs all the time. And the hypothetical of us costing the town is untrue. This is not something the town has ever had to pay out. They've never been party to a lawsuit by anybody who's wrecked on an e-scooter. This is made up by town staff, Pam Reese and Brian Day, to discourage and interfere with our business coming here, which is incredibly unfortunate. The use of the misuse of public resources, I believe, is what should really outrage people.
Yeah, well, just IML and this whole like Brian Day crafting legislation and like working kind of behind the scenes too, and bragging about it in this email about how he's helped squash this prior bill that Jason Barrickman had. It's very concerning. I mean, obviously not illegal. It's interesting because right now in the State House, they're discussing a bill how legislators can't lobby. And it's kind of interesting because Brian Day has kind of taken on a role of not only just legislating, because he attached a draft legislation to this email. So he's legislating and acting as a legislator, being paid for with taxpayer dollars. That's not what we, pay for him to do. We've got legislators for that and lobbyists, like IML. And he says, hey, I want IML's eyes on this. And now he's kind of working with IML on lobbying efforts. He's just really blurring the line of, I think he's blurring his line of what his duties are to the town. He's going above and beyond to kind of work on this legislation when it's just like, you guys were working on that. The town should just bring it up to ordinance and have the public discuss it, and he's working on legislation while he should be managing the town, right?
Well, and that's pretty timely, right? To have this ban be instituted silently for all of the work that, staff did behind the scenes. I mean, the communications that we uncovered were not just, Brian and Brad, but Pam reaching out to a contact we had at ISU prior to a meeting there, meddling. Same thing, reaching out to Connect Transit and meddling. Former, City of Bloomington city manager, same thing. They are willing to put in the work, right, to their end and make sure that this project never sees the light of day, while also telling us you need to do these things, and so that's what I think that's what we're so upset about is we were given standards, we achieved them, and then there is still this concerted effort to make sure that our project never comes to light.
Hold on one sec, Kristen. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. We're doing a special show this morning with Kristen and Crystal. They're managing partners at Modern Mobility. It's an e-scooter company, and they wanted to come here to the town of Normal, and the town of Normal, we've got the facts figures, folks, $200,000, $300,000 that they're missing out on tax revenue because the sales of these e-scooter rides, that brings in tax revenue for the town. You've got Brian Day bragging about, shutting down previous bills that would allow e-scooters to come here to the state of Illinois and create a framework anyway for e-scooters to be here in the state of Illinois. We've got people in the comments. They say, Lincoln, I live in Lincoln. They've got e-scooters. Yes, we have them. We have private businesses that, they didn't even really, you didn't even really need Senate Bill 1960. I don't think. I think most
No.
municipalities,
Right.
if a private company wants to come in and, operate, do it. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
the whole thing is just kind of silly. So they sent you on a wild goose chase to go craft this Senate Bill 1960. Took the taxpayers' time because, that takes time to hear that all out in the state house. It takes, state staff to listen to, the hearings and to create the hearings. And it took taxpayer resources for you guys to go fight for this. And the town of Normal sent you on a wild goose chase. This is just insanity. I did want to talk a little bit about Pam Reese and her efforts. She reached out to ISU officials. She reached out to Connect Transit officials to try to meddle. And they were working behind the scenes. That's what our listeners need to understand is that the town of Normal was working behind the scenes in order to squash this bill or to, add things to it to make it to where ultimately they could ban scooters and not have egg on their face. So Pam, she reached out to ISU officials, Connect Transit officials. What did she say?
Yeah, I mean, her intentions have been nefarious from the start. Let's just put that out there. Her reaching out, a week before we had a meeting scheduled, a working group at ISU that was discussing this. She reached out to the lead contact over there, just reiterating that they were lukewarm on this idea. And, there was a lot to be, discussed down at the state level of, whether these could even be ridden on streets, which was the original baseline, we were given. And this is something that,
might I add, we're not even trying to get on ISU campus. We've
Yes.
never been trying to get on the campus.
Not on the ISU property at all. But the email that I shared with you, the receipts that we brought, and the experience that we've had, working with Pam and staff, and our conclusion is pretty grim. Pam is an unrepentant liar, and she's not even a good one. Because her own communications will show her inconsistencies, and we provided those examples to her. How do your own internal emails, which contradict you, how is that something that she shouldn't have to answer for? And, why did this tort immunity language show up 2 years after the initial baselines were established? Someone like her only answers to the guy with the huge conflict of interest, Normal Mayor Chris Koos. And this is why this is so despicable. That email, like I said previously in the broadcast, was sent in response to me reaching out to Normal Police, asking, hey, what's the enforcement mechanism here? How are you guys going to interact with scooters now that they are banned? And so, her, taking on that inquiry was for her to shut us down. And this is all good for people in Normal to know. And who does citizens complain about this? Someone needs to take accountability here. And I think people, if this is not something you want to see your unelected officials act like, they should contact her and the council and the mayor directly. They really do have the most to hide here.
Well, and I want to bring this up to our listeners and anybody we have a lot of business owners, obviously, who operate here in the town. And if you take anything away from today's program, really, you should take away that it's not just the e-scooter thing, okay? It just so happens that Chris Koos has a bike shop and he has a conflict of interest and it's e-scooters today. But what about tomorrow? What if Chris Koos, for some odd reason, despises donuts? Right. And would much prefer muffins to be sold in the town of Normal. And, I'm using this example, and I know it's, kind of a weak example, right? But what if he prefers donuts instead of muffins, and you want to open up a donut shop, because that is your passion and you like donuts. Okay. But the town of Normal mayor doesn't like donuts, and he shuts you down because he would much prefer, the muffin shop to open up. You know what I
And
mean?
how this isn't an ethical violation, I don't know, or a campaign finance violation of an in-kind donation. Like I said, it's pretty timely that the town be so quiet about this ban. It's not something that was brought up at all to him during this election cycle. We've been waiting, since that GLT article that really failed to point to, clarity whether the town was going to ban these or not. The article headline is they may not opt in, and so it's one of those things that I think when you start to peel back the layers, you sort of see the level of control, is that there was no public debate. He did not bring this up on a council agenda and has refused to. We had a scheduled meeting to speak to him, but like I said previously, is when we started pressing them, asking, why are we hearing that you're having 2-on-1s with council, not recommending the ordinance. He had an assistant cancel a meeting on us to never be rescheduled. And so, when you're not out in public taking any sort of questions on the things that you're doing, you've really lost the ability for public input to be considered. We're not the only people who want to see these here. So all those voices are being blacked out too. There's not the ability for anybody to really know this is going on, and that's why we appreciate the opportunity to share here.
Tell me about this Cardinal Infrastructure and their role in supporting the town of Normal's infrastructure initiatives, like transportation infrastructure initiatives. So taxpayers, we pay for Cardinal to secure federal funding. Now, this is like a I don't know, third party, I guess. So the town of Normal isn't, lobbying for federal funding. We, as taxpayers, pay for the services of Cardinal Infrastructure to secure federal funding to support various transportation projects. So tell me what you learned about Cardinal Infrastructure and the e-scooters and how that fits in.
Yeah. Again, if it weren't for FOIA, none of this would be known. And so Cardinal Infrastructure is a firm that helps the town identify federal grants and opportunities. Over the last 3 years, they have identified several opportunities that would have supported upgrades to the town's infrastructure. And we know this, again, because the FOIA request revealed these communications. Why they came into our FOIA poll is because of the word e-scooter. And to our knowledge, these opportunities were never acted upon. Even though the town pays for this firm to find federal dollars, they flopped on the chance for this. So this not only shows just terrible leadership, and mismanagement. You know, how can you complain about tort immunity as it relates to deficient infrastructure, but you do nothing when presented with a solution?
Mm.
Well,
Yes.
Pam does dream of micromobility, though.
Right? And the sustainability plan, right? You know, the performative
Right.
sustainability plan. And,
Hmm.
you know, this is what we're spending our taxpayer dollars on.
Yeah, well, and we're paying, for Cardinal to find these federal funds to update infrastructure that they're so worried that's going to cause somebody to, crash on their e-scooter. But they're sleeping on getting that federal funding, right?
Yeah,
So
to our
Cardinal's
knowledge,
looking to
none of
find it.
these, I mean, none of them were
But
acted
they're paying
upon.
for it.
Yeah, none of them were acted upon in our knowledge to update infrastructure as it regards to e-scooters. So, you know, here's an opportunity that was open for them, and they didn't take it. And so, you know, what's the point if you know, there's solutions out there to the problems that you're saying, you know, to send all of these town of normal workers, you know, and employees to fight this effort, and how much it costed over the last 3 years for that. You know, let's add up the dollars. You know,
Mm.
again, a lot of compensation between those 3 individuals that we've named over the last couple years um, to fight this. You know, I mean, this is what people clock in and go do, and that's pretty disconcerting as a small business.
We have to take a quick break, ladies. We're going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. You can subscribe to the channel. You guys always get more content through the breaks. But I do want to talk about, council members. They've been having these 2-on-1s with Pam Reese, allegedly, right? This is happening, and I'm curious, what are some of the council members, and if you're willing to name them, who are supportive of your effort to come to the town of Normal, who's been supportive, because I think that's very important, considering we've got an election coming up April 1st, 2025, and I think it's important to also note that if these council members are agreeing to these 2-on-1s, they shouldn't be doing that, really, because that's like, it's unethical. It's not wrong because it doesn't violate the Opens Meeting Act, and Pam knows that, right? That she's not doing anything illegal because, Open Meetings Act, if you have much more than that, you have to, do it before the public, okay, if you're having meetings like that. But she's, right in under that 2-on-1s, right? So she doesn't have to call the whole staff and tell them like, hey, let's deprive Normal Lights of these e-scooters. She's, this is a workaround. It's a loophole. And if these council members are meeting with her, in these like private settings, I don't like the idea of that. But I want to ask you if there are council members who are supportive. On the other side, you're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Okay, ladies.
Yep.
We'll get to that here for our radio friends. We're getting close to the end of the show. But tell me, a little bit about what's your next step? Is there a fight that you're going to continue? Is there a way? I mean, is it done because of this, quiet ban? Are
Yeah,
you going to do Bloomington maybe?
yeah, we've got options. Yeah, and we've had, and that's kind of the unfortunate part. We've had the best conversations with the city of Bloomington. Totally different experience, and that kind of goes to show you, you know, the difference in leadership. And yeah, I mean, we still have some options. We've got some pivots. You know, I think we weren't, you know, after especially, passing the law, that was an Everest of a project. We kind of thought there'd be smooth sailing. So yeah, we're regrouping as far as, where we want to go next. City of Bloomington conversations have been, so much more productive. And, while it's a smaller application, it's still incredibly worthwhile because we've always wanted to be more transportation than recreation. We see this as an opportunity for community members, and it's also an opportunity for revenue. And so, yeah, we're not giving up.
We're
Not after all this.
Yeah, don't give up.
Well, and
So,
if we give up, somebody else is going to walk in and take it over. So
Probably one of their good
we're a
old
little
boy
scared of
friends.
that.
yeah,
Right.
honestly, maybe he'll eventually find an e-scooter company that is his friend, and then he allows them. Or like I said in the show here, it's like if it's e-scooters today, what is it tomorrow?
Mhm.
That normal lights are
Mhm.
going to be deprived of. We should be all, this is a nonpartisan issue. We
Yep.
should all be about business coming to the state or coming
Mhm.
to the town of Normal.
Mhm.
It's good for everybody when business thrives here. And the Republican, Democrat, it really doesn't matter. We
Yeah,
should all
absolutely.
be pro business.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's a
Right.
nonpartisan issue. It's not something that is one side or the other. It's people as a whole, and that's unfortunate that it has become such a sensitive issue. For us.
Hmm. We're going to be right back.
Especially in a town where,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Kristen.
especially in a town where it makes so much sense.
Hmm.
2, 3 colleges here. It's the perfect place for these.
Yep. And we'll be back. But if you're comfortable sharing, like what was the expected revenue? Did you guys run the numbers on that? Hey, if you had been operating these past few years, what would you
Yeah,
guys?
I mean that's how we got the figure. Between $200,000 and $300,000 of lost tax revenue. We were always modeled after Bloomington, Indiana, which shares a similar climate. They've had scooters for years. The operation there is pretty high gross revenue, and just work that problem back. It's a pretty profitable business when run right and run correctly. And so, yeah, I mean, just quite a loss. The 1% grocery tax was reinstituted. Water bills are going up in Normal. This is something tax revenue wise they could use.
Hmm. We're back. Hold on one second. Hey, good morning, folks. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Lots of things to hit. Kristen Crystal, managing partners of Modern Mobility, they were told, go on this wild goose chase, try to clear up the vehicle code to allow e-scooters here in the town of Normal. Meanwhile, the town of Normal was working behind the scenes to squash this bill that they told them to go fight for in the state house. Why does Chris have so much beef with e-scooters? Oh, maybe it's because he owns a bike shop. Duh. I like this comment. It's because Chris Koos is a socialist dictator. LOL. You can always comment on the show or text me 309-451-9299. Kristen, tell me what it was the projected. We got this $300,000 number of projected tax revenue.
Hmm.
Like you said, water rates are going up. Things are expensive here in the town of Normal. That would have provided some relief maybe to the taxpayers, and we should all be pro business. What kind of loss of revenue are you guys looking at? Had you been able to operate here in the town?
Yeah, previously being affiliated with Bird, we had a lot of information about other fleets that were similar to ours. So modeled after Bloomington, Indiana, that has had them for years, similar climate, similar demographics. This is over $1 million a year operation. And so 8.75% is taxable rides. Over the last 3 years, town of Normal would have lost between $200,000 and $300,000 worth of tax revenue. And as small business people, this is life changing for us. That's kind of the saddest part, right? Instead of being able to start a business 3 years ago, here we are 3 years later, pre-revenue still, have passed a law we didn't need, spent a lot of time and a lot of money, lost out on other opportunities that we could have attempted to take advantage of. For what? You know, that's what I
Mm-hmm.
think what we're still asking. Why is this pain point still here? And again, they're banned, but they're not banned. But they're banned, but we're not going to tell anybody. Once you peel the onion, you realize none of it makes sense. And the reason it doesn't make sense is because it's really obvious why this is not coming here. And a person who holds the power and the levers, who has a huge conflict of interest, who should have recused themselves from any sort of decision making as it regards to this project, didn't. And no one there thought, the optics of this would just look bad. We should do the right thing. And instead of doing the right thing, they did the exact opposite. And that's the position the town has put themselves in. That's why we're here today,
Mm-hmm.
because other news organizations failed to ask any sort of probing questions as to why did these things make sense. And so, yeah, we just, we appreciate you having us on for this long to have this lengthy conversation.
Well,
And I
there's
think
so many layers to this. Also, I want to get to this question. Are you planning on filing a complaint with the Illinois State Board of Elections about Chris Koos not announcing the ban? And in effect, this is an in-kind donation to his campaign because he doesn't have to answer to this if they don't announce the ban or enforce the ban.
certainly exploring it. I think that we waited, like I said earlier, not patiently, but not announcing the ban is pretty timely as far as his campaign goes. How this isn't an in-kind donation to his campaign, what an amazing gift this is. Not staying quiet about something that's politically damaging before an election is pretty diabolical.
Mm.
And with weeks till the election season is over, they're not going to announce anything. And if they do after the election, does that not prove our point? That this be politically damaging to a candidate who, has a huge conflict of interest in owning a competitive business. We had hoped that this would have been a public discussion, and it hasn't. The reason that it hasn't is because of what I just said.
Yeah.
It's politically damaging.
Kathleen Lorenz or any other council members, have they been supportive?
Yeah, we've had conversations. Well, I'll clarify that. We've tried to have conversations with every council member. Several council members, including Kathleen Lorenz, have stood out to us as real leaders on the council. And I want to applaud her for several reasons. Councilwoman Lorenz is incredibly approachable. She took our initial inquiry a few years ago and has been a welcoming advocate for small businesses in the community. She understands the nuances of SB 1960 while grasping the reality of it all, that scooters are here. This is new technology. We should be embracing it. And so, yeah, there's other council members, including Scott Preston and Andy Byers, who've also shown the willingness to speak to us. Unfortunately, I've not had the ability to get Councilman McCarthy to communicate with us. We've been trying to email with him for months, and we were also told by a councilwoman. I'm forgetting her name.
Karen Smith.
Karen Smith.
Karen Smith, yeah.
Yeah, that if we were to speak to her, she would need us to go and pass the tort immunity first. So yeah, not productive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the part, is that when, and this being a community, a citizen initiative, us helping draft this legislation and introducing it to, legislators here. Hey, this is what the town needs, and this being a community conversation, you would think that there would be council discussions. And the reason that doesn't happen is because the mayor will not put it on the agenda. So you've lost the ability for representation when you have someone who is willing to control things like that. And this should have been a discussion, openly and publicly with all council people, to say their piece and have community members come in. We would have been there. Other people in the community that we know support this would have been there. And yeah, you might have people who, they don't like e-scooters. They should be a part of the conversation too. We don't deny that. There's, real tough conversations around safety. That's what we had hoped, crafting SB 1960 would have done and did, to quell, some of the concerns that people have. But yeah, it's unfortunate, that it's everything's been bypassed here in community
Yeah,
conversations have
and
not been
I think it's
encouraged.
unfortunate that your really your rights. I mean, I'm going to go that far. In pursuit of happiness, right? Everybody in this country has a right
Mhm.
to pursue happiness, and you were deprived of $1 million um, venture here. And for what reason, other than maybe Chris Koos has a bike shop, or they just don't like e-scooters for whatever reason, which should have been just put on the agenda to talk about and cite a reason why this toward immunity thing is a goalpost thing, and you're constantly moving it, and it's just so annoying. So I'm sorry your rights were trampled.
Thank
I
you.
feel like I have
Thank
to
you.
Thank you.
apologize on behalf of the town here. I feel like your rights were trampled. So maybe you have a suit. Honestly, really, it's you're infringing on your right to pursue happiness and open a business.
Loss of joy.
Yeah,
Lots of
definitely.
joy. But I appreciate it. That's the end of our time, ladies. Thank you so much. How do we learn more about modern mobility, and how do we help modern mobility? What should our listeners do? Contact council members?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things here. Share the story on social media. We have a petition on our Modern Mobility Facebook page that people are welcome to sign. We will be having a teletown hall shooting for the later this month. Something that Town of Normal should have had, but that we'll have that in their absence. And yeah, contacting the mayor and council. Demand they explain this publicly. That would be the best way for this community conversation to be brought out into the sunlight. And that everybody have the chance to participate.
Wonderful. Well, you ladies have a blessed rest of your day. Folks, this has been a special edition of Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. As always, find the archive on YouTube. We'll catch you tomorrow morning.
Thanks so much, Kat.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, Kat.
Yep.
You have a great rest of your day,
You
and
too.
we'll talk again soon. And folks, be sure to contact
Okay.
your council members. Bye-bye, ladies. All right, folks. Tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. Subscribe to the channel. You know what to do, and share this out. If anything, just if you live in the town of Normal, the best way to share this out, maybe just make a social media post. Normal banned e-scooters. I think that just bringing that out into the sunlight and showing people that, yeah, this is in fact true, that Normal has banned these scooters effectively. I think that is something that's going to entice Chris Koos to answer as to why that happened, and he shouldn't be shielded from that just because he's running for mayor. All right, you guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. Love you so much.